Hello, welcome. I'm Steph Pellish, and I am a motherhood, life, and business coach for women everywhere. And I'm excited that you're joining me here this morning. I want to talk about something that so many women, so many moms struggle with, and that's setting boundaries. And so I would love for you to let me know, is this something that you struggle with? Is this something that you've been really good about setting boundaries in your own life? And so go ahead and put in the comments, let me know what boundaries even mean to you. So I'll kind of tell you while you're answering that question, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am married to my high school sweetheart. We've been married for 17 years and we've been together for a lot longer than that. And we have 4 children together. We have a teenager and a toddler and 2 in the middle. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. That is where I started my career. It also gives me a lot of foundation for the work that I continue to do through my coaching. I started working with families, working with the kids one-on-one, started coaching families to help support their kids in their daily routines, and recognized through my own life experience, as well as working with these families, that it is so important for mom to be taking care of herself. We hear that all of the time, right? We hear how important it is to fill our own cup and then fill others, put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. But until we're actually able to embody that and have the resources and the support to do that for ourselves, it's really hard. I know that was not modeled for me growing up. That was not something that I learned. It's something that I had to start to teach myself. And now I have really good boundaries. I'm able to fill up my own cup. I'm able to recognize when that cup needs to be filled. And if we talk about the pitcher or the cup, right? When we pour into it, and we continually pour into it, there's then excess to flow out. So that's the excess that I have to show up for my family, for my children, for my businesses, for my clients, whatever else may need my attention and my energy. But if I don't have enough and I'm pouring out, what's going to happen is I'm going to tip over and shatter. And that's exactly what happened to me in 2019 and 2020. I shattered and really went through a lot of personal struggles, and my journey from 2020 till today has been finding myself, finding my voice, and supporting other women in finding their own confidence, finding their own support and resources so that they can really learn how to fill up their own cups and then have plenty to give to what needs to get done. And so today we're going to talk about boundaries and how we can set boundaries for ourselves, but it's more about setting a boundary for our energy. And so when we think about boundaries, we think about what we're willing to give and what we're not, what we're willing to accept from others and what we're not. And so that can be energetically, that can be physically, that can be tangibly. Somebody offers us an actual item, whether or not we want it, or if we take it and do something else with it, or it can be somebody's time or somebody's words. All of those things are things that we need to learn how to set boundaries around. And so today, we're just going to dive right in. One of the ways that I find so effective for myself and for my clients in setting boundaries is first knowing your core values, knowing what the priorities are for yourself and for your family so that you know what's most important. So many of us don't ever even take time to figure out what's important in our lives. And so when we don't know what's important, we just let it all come in, or we send it all out. And so those setting boundaries, those really firm boundaries, come from knowing what our priorities, knowing what our values are personally. Now, core values is something that I work with my clients on figuring out what their core values are. So I'm going to touch on them really briefly, but if you want to learn more, go ahead and reach out and we can talk about, I have another course dedicated to core values, or that's something that I do in one-on-one work. So you can reach out to me for more information on that. But if you look at, you can go onto Pinterest, onto Google, and search core value word list. And you can find hundreds of lists with hundreds of words. But going through those, looking at all of these words, all of these feelings, all of these things, maybe it's family, maybe it's spirituality, maybe it's service, maybe it's strength, maybe it's growth, maybe it's community, maybe it's organization, maybe it's honor, trust, loyalty. There's so many, right? I can continue to name them, but you can find a list to go through. And so what we do is we start to narrow those down. We start to figure out which ones really resonate for you. And what's going to resonate for me is not going to resonate for you necessarily. And these are things that are true about us and who we are, regardless of the situation. These are the things that are always important to us, no matter what. They're the things that we always come back to. And there are no right or wrong values. If it's a value for you and it feels right for you, then it is right for you. We also have to be a little careful here too, because with core values, sometimes we choose aspirational values, and those are the values that we wish we had or we're trying to have. And so I use this example a lot. If I were to say that organization is a value for me, you would come into my life and think, well, stuff's kind of organized, but not really. It's not a core value. It's definitely an aspirational value. I am constantly trying to get better at organization, keeping things together and organized, because with a family of 6, we need to know all of the things and where they all are. But I cannot say that that is one of my core values. That is definitely one of my aspirational values. And so I invite you to, when you're looking through these lists, when you're looking at these ideas, keep that in mind. What are always true about you? And be honest. Be really honest with yourself. Allow this to be an experiment. And this is not something that you do in 10 minutes and you just sit there and you find the words that resonate. This is something where you sit there, you go through some words, you find the ones that resonate. Maybe you get it down to 10 or 20. And then you start to let those kind of linger for a little bit, let them resonate, see how they fit, until you get to about 4. And these don't change, like I mentioned. However, sometimes the word might change, or at some point I had 2 words and I found one word that kind of encompassed them, which felt much more in alignment for me. And so it's an ever processing, it's an ever moving process, ever evolving process. There we go. Finding my words today. And so having these core values allows me to make decisions based on what I say and know my values and priorities are. So for example, if I say my priority is family, if family is one of my core values, then when something comes up over the weekend and it's family or work, I'm going to choose family. However, if my core value is stability, financial stability, and I have two events that are coming up. One is work that's going to make a significant amount of money, and the other is a family event. I may choose that work event because I have this financial stability as my core value. And so it's a really great way to get secure in your decision-making process. How many of you have a hard time making decisions? One, as moms, we're so overwhelmed with decisions, right? How many of you have already needed to decide what's for breakfast, what's needed to be packed for lunch, and now you're thinking about what needs to get ready for dinner and whether or not you need to go pick something up or bring something home? All of those things are already decisions that you've had to make, and we're only talking about mealtime for one day. And so when we can eliminate that decision-making overwhelm, that decision-making process in some areas, or make it easier for ourselves, it gets so much easier. And so knowing your values, knowing your priorities, sitting with this for a couple of days or a couple times over a few days can be so informative in your life. And then what happens is, we're just going to use this work and family example that I already mentioned. This is where we get to set boundaries. This is where we get to make decisions that we know are right for us and for our family. And so if Aunt Susie calls and says, we're having a birthday party for Uncle Joe this weekend, we would love to see you there. And of course, you love to see your family, you love to get together for birthdays and celebrate, but you have this work event. It's then a lot easier to say to Aunt Susie, I would love to be at this event this weekend, but I need to commit to my work event because that's where my priorities are this weekend. And when we start to over-explain ourselves, when we start to say, oh, I really need to make the money from this work event, I want to be there, but I'm sorry, I can't. When we start to do that, apologizing, when we start to explain ourselves, that's when other people feel our insecurity about the decision that we make. And so then they start to push back. They start to poke holes, which makes us feel like we need to come back stronger. And as soon as we start to come back stronger, so do they. And a lot of times we then cave or change our mind or feel that guilt or shame that we didn't make the right decision. But it was the right decision for us. The other person was the one who was having a hard time, but it's our life. It's our family that we're looking out after. And sometimes in the moment, we have to make decisions in the moment that are going to impact for the long term. And so, well, sure, do we want to go to Aunt Susie and Uncle Joe's party? Sure, maybe we do. But having this business relationship, having this work event is not only going to bring in some income, but it's also going to be a networking opportunity. It's also a client that you've been working on getting in and will bring in more income later. You're also modeling for your kids that you know what the priorities are for your family, that you know what the priorities are for yourself. And so you model that for your kids to do for themselves as well. And what a gift. What a gift on teaching kids how to set boundaries. Now, as a parent, those boundaries might not always be what you want for them to set boundaries on. And so that can be a little bit tricky, but respecting your kids also have boundaries, respecting that they are allowed to make their own decisions, just like you are allowed to make your own decisions. I work with a lot of moms, and I also interact with a lot of moms through my work, sometimes through collaborations inside of my networking community. When I do podcasts or interviews, so many of these women are juggling life, kids, business, whatever, the house, right? All of these things. And when someone that I'm interacting with has really strong boundaries, it actually feels safer for me. I recently have had a few interviews where women had their kids with them while they were interviewing me. Now, I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. Didn't always have childcare readily available. So I get it. I understand that sometimes our kids need to be with us. However, the 2 interviews that I did, they had kids coming in and out. They were distracting. The woman interviewing was really distracting. And I didn't feel really safe or comfortable in sharing because it was interrupted. It wasn't a fluid conversation. And so I didn't show up as my best self for these interviews because these women opened up their schedule for any time so that it was convenient for their speakers, for their interviewees, not so that they were set up for their best time. So when we make decisions that have boundaries that are best for us, if I show up at 9 o'clock at night because that's what my clients told me was the best time for them, I am not showing up as my best self. I guarantee you that. 9 o'clock at night, I want to be on the couch, reading a book, watching TV, snuggling with my husband, getting ready for bed, and not thinking about my clients. No offense to any of my clients, but I just want to be zoning out and getting ready for bed. If you want to talk to me at 9 o'clock in the morning, I am going to bring my best self. I know I am best in the morning and the early afternoon. So that's the time that I schedule my clients. Now, if I have a client that needs a 9 p.m. one time because of a scheduling conflict, am I able to show up for that? Absolutely. But I know that that's not going to be great for me. It's not going to be great for my family. And therefore, it's not really going to be what's best for my client either. And so I create my schedule around my priorities, my family, and my best times. And if you are one of my clients and you show up during those times, you are going to know that you get the best of me. And if for some reason, maybe I've got kids home, somebody's sick, I didn't get good sleep, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to let you know. And I'm going to set that boundary that I'm going to cancel or reschedule our appointment because I want you to get the best of what I have to offer. And so that's a boundary that I have committed to myself, that I will only show up for my clients at the times that are best for me. How many of you do that? If you are coaches, if you have clients that you work with one-on-one, maybe you're a therapist, maybe you're a mom who has to schedule appointments, how many times do you just take what's offered or the first available? And how many times do you think about what is really best for me and my family. And maybe I need to wait another week, or maybe I need to wait a few more days so that I can get an appointment at this time. Or maybe I need to find a different provider to get the times that I need. Probably not too many of you. You probably take what's available. Again, here's the boundary: taking what's available. What if the new boundary was, I take what I want and what I need, and I take it first? I take it because me taking it first allows other people to see that it's safe for them to take it too. I was at an event recently and we had ordered lunch. Lunch arrived at 12 o'clock. We were in session. We never stopped for lunch. Finally, at 1:30, an hour and a half after the lunch had arrived, I stood up from the session and I got myself food because I was hungry and I needed to eat. Do you know what happened once I did that? Everyone else got up to get food. How many of us sat there for an hour and a half thinking, I'm really hungry and there's food so close? How silly. We didn't interrupt the session. It wasn't distracting. We actually ate our meal while we continued the session and continued the flow of conversation. But then we all got what we needed, which was food and nutrition, right? But somebody had to go first. And finally, I decided I was going to be that leader. I was going to go first. And I know those are simple examples that I gave today of boundaries and of prioritizing myself, but I hope you found those helpful. I would love to know in the comments where you think you can start setting new boundaries for yourself. And if you need support in figuring out what your core values are, in figuring out your priorities, in standing firm in those boundaries, finding the confidence to stand firm in those boundaries took me a long time, took me some work to feel really good. But the more I dug into my core values, the more I dug into why those are so important to me, the easier it became to set and hold my boundaries. And so today I invite you to discover what your boundaries are and to set the boundaries that are right for you. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to like and subscribe to Thriving Through Motherhood here on YouTube. And know that if you need anything, ask for what you need. Know I'm here to support you. I'm Steph Pellish. I'm a life, motherhood, and business coach for moms and women everywhere, and I would love to support you in your journey. Sending lots of love.